Back on the Saddle Cartel YouTube channel. Thanks everybody that's going to be tuning in tonight with my guest Jake Hofer. You probably know Jake from the Exodus Outdoor Group, the Land Podcast. Had a lot to do with the Whitetail Cribs episodes that came out that everybody loves. Jake, thanks for joining me tonight.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this since we etched it on the calendar. So thank you.
Yeah, man, I can't thank you enough for carving out a little time to get on with me and kind of spread the word about what the new beginnings is for Jake Hofer and
Yeah.
where you're going to be taking your media from here. But first, Jake, if you don't mind, just so people watching have a little bit of idea about you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and kind of where you found your love for the outdoors to begin with.
Yeah. Grew up and born and raised, still here, North Central Illinois. Both sides of my family have lived here forever. So yeah, never left. Actually, I take that back. I lived in the suburbs for like a year when my wife got a new job. It was not for me or her. So live on a small tract of ground and just love everything to do with outside. And I can tell when the more I'm outside, the happier I usually am. And so I'm really blessed to be able to have a little bit of ground behind my house to go out and play around. Ironically, I grew up on a small deer farm, and so grew up around deer, and I never really thought that was interesting or strange or different until I grew up, and I was like, man, that was most people don't have deer in their backyard when they're growing up, and um, my dad is still to this day a whitetail nut, and so obviously that rubbed off on me over the years, and going through school, obviously there was always the idea of working in, I don't want to say the outdoor industry, but like working within this space was always kind of a distant thought. And the long and short of it, I started as an intern at Exodus, fresh out of college. It was the classic take a higher paying job and maybe not like it as much, or take the lower paying job and follow your passion. And I did that. And my wife now, girlfriend then, I mean, my parents, they're just all super supportive of go and chase it and see what happens. And I turned 30 last year, and I've been here ever since. So it's been one of those deals where you never really anticipate where things are going to go, and you just one door leads into the next one, and um, I'm just super blessed. And there's been some obviously some really hard and challenging times throughout that period, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give you a chance to touch on that. If you didn't follow Exodus Outdoors, I was an avid user of you guys' cameras, part of your pro staff. I loved everything you guys stood for, everything you put out there. Great products, and I was so sorry to hear how everything kind of wound up finishing up for you guys. But if you wanted to touch on anything,
Yeah.
clear anything up on that for folks that are watching, please take the time to do that. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, no, I think it's something. Yeah, it's something that definitely needs to get addressed. I mean, so we tried like hell to try to fix some of the problems that were going on. Overseas manufacturing is absolutely brutal. Any company, no matter where their products are made, I don't think consumers understand how much really goes into that, top to bottom. Obviously, we were a consumer electronic product, so there's more parts that go into that than something that's maybe a textile. So, I mean, there was just a lot of things that went into that, and we made our own app. That was a huge capital expenditure, and so we put a lot of cash into it. And then how it works for a lot of people might not realize, when you're buying data from to get data for a camera, a lot of times that company is buying bulk data from someone else, and so there's these
Mhm.
contracts, and so looping everything in, overseas manufacturing would not update the firmware to operate with our app. Okay, and then we had minimum spends with the company we were buying our bulk data from. And then so you can see how that house of cards quickly comes down. And I mean, we tried really hard, and throughout that entire period, I just wanted to ensure no matter what happened, exhausted every effort, called every single person I knew, to make sure that if it didn't work out, I could say that we did everything that we could. And
Sure.
so that's the really brief version of that. And I attest to our team, like we tried everything we could. And man, I tell you what, it's a lot better now. But when all that is going down, you think of all the customers that you had earned through the content, or by having a good quality product, or the customer service team doing an exceptional job. All those people go to your through your head of your
Mhm.
as you're going out of business. and
Yep.
it was really, really hard, and it felt like kind of honestly felt like you let the world down, but life moves on, and a lot more people like yourself were really supportive and compassionate, and so I think that a lot. And obviously, there's some people that are upset, as they should be. I'd be upset too. So that's happy to answer your questions about it, but that's really in a nutshell of kind of what happened, and that's it felt like an eternity in time when it was going on,
Hmm.
but as time moves on, it's allowed new and exciting opportunities. Which one of them being is I bought back the we had another buyer. We were going to sell the YouTube channel and the we were going to sell the YouTube channel and the podcast, which was kind of a weird feeling as well.
Yeah.
But we had to refund our customers. We owed customers money, and we had to come up with a way to do that. That was something that had a tangible value, and so we had a buyer, and it just took a long time. And at that time, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do from my career at that standpoint. And honestly, we would have team calls every morning, 8 o'clock, and I was sitting at my desk at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, man, this is so weird. There's nothing going on, and I was like, man, I should just buy that back and keep doing the content because man, I've really enjoyed it. I've made so many great friends, so many great connections, heard so many great stories, and I was honestly missing it, a lot of that.
Yeah.
Traveling and meeting all these cool places, like seeing the whitetail cribs on, like there's a team that did a lot of that, but when I went along with those, there's some really cool places, and so that's what I did. I ended up buying back the assets for the same price that someone else was going to buy it for, and got our customers refunded, and allows me to relaunch it with a new face, but familiar voice, and just keep doing what a lot of people really enjoyed.
Cool. So, anybody watching, anybody that's going to watch this in the future, what is the new media going to be called? What's the rebrand here?
Yeah, so it's owned by a completely different company now, but it's which is me, WHTL Whitetail. So we were talking before when you come up with a name, there's been so much whitetail. I mean, I can just think of a lot of really cool brands that are whitetail, whatever noun, whatever adjective, and I'm not that creative, so we just went with whitetail. So it was a collective effort. One of the editors that will be helping out, he texted me. He's like, "What do you think of this?" I was like, I like it," and I remember we were driving home from the gym one morning, and my wife was like, "What about like shorthand whitetail, like a license plate?" And I was like, I don't like that." And then that's exactly what we went with. So she planted the seed of the name.
What you landed on anyway, huh?
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, it works though, And anybody in this industry or anybody with a love of whitetail, I mean, we relate to that instantly. So,
Yeah,
if you know anything about a deer, when you see WHTL, you're going to know exactly what that means. So,
that's right. That's
kudos
right.
to you for a great name. So, yeah,
Appreciate it.
when are we expecting the first episodes to come out with this?
Yeah, so organizing kind of the back end of what this looks like, throughout that process of Exodus, whatever's happening is happening there. You start to wonder if some of the contacts you've made in the past are, lose my number type feeling. And that wasn't the feeling at all. I called a couple people and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to do this. Would you guys have any interest?" And I made 3 phone calls that day, and I got three. Yeah, we would definitely like to be involved. So getting some partnerships lined up to have it make sense. And really, I'd say in the next 2 weeks, we're going to have our first episode. Planning on doing an episode with Cameron, who did a lot of the editing. It was a really big part of the Exodus. Really thankful for what he's done over the years for us. And so we're going to do an episode of kind of recapping everything and giving an idea of what it looks like in the future. And
Yeah.
just you never know how things are going to shake out and how things will unfold. And as of right now, I couldn't be more excited. I think it's going to be really great. And Exodus, it's so weird for me because I'm just a guy. Like I assure you, I'm just a normal guy that likes whitetails. But we built a really big platform, and you don't really realize that until you go out in public or you run into someone. I mean, when all this was going down, I went to our local farm store like 40 minutes away, and I'm actually looking at the trail cameras of just like just to see what was on sale and everything else. This guy comes up and he's like, "Hey, you're Jake with Exodus," and I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Dude, I'm so sorry to hear what happened." And I was like, "Dude, I can't go anywhere without getting like I was just trying to distract my mind here a little bit." So it's what we had built. I'm so grateful that we get to continue building it because I feel it's special. There's a lot of great pieces of whitetail content out there. There's so many talented people, but it's also fun just to have kind of your own spin. And selfishly, I like talking to a lot of different people and hearing what they have to say.
Well, and, and that's one thing I did want to commend you on. I followed the podcast religiously. My job, it's a lot of driving, a lot of windshield time. So podcasts are my thing. I'm constantly trying to soak up knowledge, just listen to people's thoughts, and and just pick up on little things. And man, you do such a fantastic job of your interviews and your guests and who you bring on, just spreading the knowledge of whitetails or land and just gosh, you do so good, and it's such a joy and just a pleasure to listen to what you put out. I'm really excited for what the future is going to hold for you. You
I
just
appreciate that.
you do a fantastic job. So
Well, it took a lot of practice. So,
yeah,
I mean, it took a long time, and, between the Land I think Land podcast is up to 158 episodes, and the Exodus podcast was up to 350 some, so I've got a lot of reps, and, I appreciate those kind words, but it is fun, and I think it's always great when you have a natural curiosity to what I at the end of the day, I just don't do it because I feel like I have to. I do it because I wanna learn something, and there's
yeah,
some I just I don't know. There's a lot in the world. It's a big world, and there's a lot of things to learn from everyone. And the minute you think you know everything is a very, very bad day. And
you
I'm
get
very
humbled
far
real
from
quick.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right.
So, with all that experience, all those great guests you've had on, how much has it really helped you excel in your hunting skills? I mean, have you picked up on a lot of stuff and actually applied that? What you've learned from all these interviews.
Yes, absolutely. And I think throughout that process, there was a lot of points of actually further confusion, to tell you the truth, because you're looking at a situation, you're like, well, Cody DeQuista would do this, or so and so would do that, and like those are conflicting. So which one's right? They both are wildly successful at what they do. And one thing that really sticks true, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, is sometimes less is more. Like the discipline of whitetail hunting is actually, I think, an earned art, and I'm still not great at it, but that's something that I've really tuned into where less is more, and I've been really, really methodical of different setups and only hunting it when it's really, really good. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll just go hunt sometimes to hunt, but it's not because of it's just might be a fun it might be at my house. Like there might not be much I'm really interested in, but I just want to go out and enjoy it. But
Sure.
when it comes to actually killing deer, I walked the farm with a buddy. It was a shared permission piece. We walked it in the spring. We hung cameras one day, and then I just remember when we walked it the very first time, I was like, on an east wind during the rut, this spot should be money.
Hmm.
And I didn't even pick a tree because we just walked through it and I put a pin on Onyx. And so I went in there in the dark. First time ever. It's November 9th. I have not hunted the spot at all. And I killed a really great deer that very first time, where in the past I would have pounded that spot on every east wind, no matter what time of the year it was.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a big, and then the deer I shot uh, later in the season, I planted a soybean food plot, didn't hunt over a single time, and then we got nasty weather opening day of muzzleloader season. I went out there, sat on the ground, and shot another good deer. So I mean, those are just two examples at the top of my head where the discipline made a big difference. And I think of the guys that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. And if you listen really closely, they all say some variation of that. And I think the most common one is when I started hunting less, I actually had more success. But
Yes.
as a young guy that has to learn the hard way, it's hard to believe. But I think that's one of the bigger things that has really stuck with me.
And some things that I've kind of picked up on and just trying to learn and listen. Access is
Yes.
so huge. Once you've kind of burned that access and the deer picking up, and I almost learned this. So it was a few years ago. I was trying to access a spot in the morning time, and I wasn't having any luck. I wasn't seeing any deer, and I finally figured out I'd shine my light up on a ridge, and there was like 8 sets of eyeballs looking at me. I'm like, "These freaking deer have been watching me walk in here every morning, and they know exactly which way I'm going, and that's why I'm not seeing anything."
Yeah.
And I figured out a way to kinda backdoor them and come in from another way, and I started seeing deer in the mornings, and I'm like, it's all about that access, and that's one thing I've really picked up on is the access is so huge when it comes to, especially chasing a mature deer.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right, because I think some people say access, like, oh, access the number one thing, almost tongue in cheek, because everyone says that. But you're exactly right. Your hunt can be over before you even get to your stand, and I've done that a bunch. And the classic example, especially with trail cameras. Obviously, I lived in the world of trail cameras for a very long time. That deer's there every single time, and when I go hunt him, he doesn't show up. It's like because he's watching you go in. It's like it's that simple.
Yep,
Well,
it
I don't
is.
think he could have. And it's like, well, you don't know exactly where he's bedded, but I
Yeah.
feel very confident in saying that that's probably what the issue is. But yeah, access is absolutely a huge, huge thing. I agree with that.
And of course, we all know it too. Wind. I mean, you cannot get upwind and let your wind blow into those bedding areas because we don't think it's that important. But a mature buck, if he catches that wind, you're done, man. He's not coming that way. And as bad as we want to be in some of the spots that we have, if we don't have that right wind, I have to stay out of those spots. Even though I want to be there so bad, the temperature and everything else is right, the time of year, bad wind, you just can't do it. You can't go.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's that's something I've noticed as well. In terms of when I've really walk a spot and pay really close attention, you can get a feeling of where a spot could be pretty good. Like I'm saying a general area. Maybe it's a 100-yard area, maybe it's a 40-yard area. But finding a spot where your scent shoots down into a gully or into an open pasture I know you're in West Virginia, so we hunt very different terrain. You hunt a harder type of terrain in buck than I do. I'll go on the record and say that. But the biggest thing is having an idea of where that scent can go or the lowest odds of a deer being, but then still giving it to the deer. And a lot of people would say that. Actually, almost all the big buck killers that come to mind say something to a similar variation. And I've noticed when I have that exact setup where my scent is going to an area, a gully, an open pasture, a 2-track road where there's probably not going to be a mature buck walking down it, my odds and sightings just go up drastically. And the other thing too is it was actually really fun. This permission farm where I shot my deer this year, it was with a guy that was somewhat newer to deer hunting. And so he would ask a lot of really good questions that would actually like make me think of an explanation because I think as anyone that does it for a while, you take things for granted and
Hmm.
you just don't think of like someone brand new wouldn't really realize that this is important. He's like, well, what about this tree? What about that tree? He's like, well, it's a great spot, but you can't hunt it. He's like, well, could you hunt it on this one? I was like, no. Like I would rather be over here shooting my son into the creek. And he's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And he had a great year too. He shot 2 of his best deer ever, and it was fun to do the play by play. And he's like, "Where should I go?" I was like, "I'd go here after sent below in the creek." And it was just like seeing those things that make a big difference. To your point, the access and where your wind goes
Hmm.
was paramount, and just be able to hunt the spot more than once and have some. At the end of the day, have a little bit of luck too.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it just boils down to being in the right place at the right time. You can check all the boxes of all those factors: your access, your wind, whatever the situation may be. But sometimes it's just about being lucky.
Yeah, I'll take that any day. I'll take luck any day.
And, as much as we study and try to absorb information as deer hunters and pick the brains of other folks, we're never really going to truly figure out a whitetail. I don't think. I mean, we can play the chess game with them, but for instance, I listen to the guys from Mississippi State a lot. They do the GPS collars and the deer studies and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm trying to apply what the data they're putting out into the situations that I face, which it's a lot different. Like you said, West Virginia, the mountainous areas, the terrain and everything else, but I just can't wrap my head around all of it. Sometimes I'm just like, man, that just doesn't make sense. And that's the love of it. If it was so easy and anybody could just do it, it would be no fun.
No.
The
It,
anticipation of just doing it the right way. I
You
don't.
gotta you gotta be pulling your hair out at some point in the
Yeah,
season for it to be fun. As bad as that sounds, you gotta think you're the worst deer hunter the day before,
yep,
and then it works the next day, and you're like, "Oh, I got this figured out."
that's right.
It's
That's right.
funny the ebbs and flows of deer hunting is probably deeper valleys than anything, and higher highs than almost anything. And that's to your point. That's the addicting and fun part of it.
It is, and and you hear it a lot, especially in the podcast world of everybody that gets on and talks about this stuff. But I truly do think that technology today, between cameras, mapping apps, and all the information that's out there, has really made everybody much more successful. This I'm nearly 50 years old. I've been doing this since I was a really, really young guy. 20, 30 years ago, none of this stuff existed. I, I had a conversation with a man not too long ago, before social media and before you could get on there and see everybody's bucks and, everybody kind of went to the check-in station. That's where you kind of met
Yeah,
and see who was killing what. And, that was kind of the social media for deer hunting was go to the check-in station, hang out for trucks to pull in with a buck in the back of their truck and just listen to the stories. And it's funny that we just don't, everything's pretty much online anymore, your check-ins and everything. People don't have that experience. And sometimes it breaks my heart for folks that didn't get to experience, what we did 20, 30 years ago. And it made it a lot harder back then, but it's almost like we just went and hunted. You wasn't trying to think so much about it. You just went and hunted. But now
yeah,
you're trying to strategize, because there's so much information coming at you and you try to pick and use what you can to for your advantage. I don't know, sometimes like you said earlier, it's just better just to keep it simple,
yeah,
and not overthink it. Focus on the main things, which is good weather. I'm 100% believe in the weather. I mean, a good cold
yeah.
front in October, it's consistently on your cameras and being out there. A good cold front comes in October, it gets deer moving. I always
Mhm.
try to take advantage of that first good cold front in October. I love it. I love it. I love it. Good wind, good access, and just get out there. Get out there and
Yeah.
make it happen.
Something I challenged myself this year was to this is a pretty crude example, but it was like, gun to your head, where am I gonna go? And I would just go there.
Yeah,
I would just have my intuition, like, where to go. And then I would typically have really I saw more mature bucks, good bucks this year than any year, and that every single time I would try to do that. But then, every now and then, when you spend time in the woods, you get to thinking, you're looking at onX when you're in the tree of like, "Alright, it's gonna be whatever wind, 2 days from now, where should I go?" And when I would plan everything out like that, I would not be as lucky.
yeah,
And but then it was just like, "Where do you go?" Boom. Or
yeah,
my wife in the morning, "Where are you gonna go?" And I'm like, then she's like, "You're thinking about it," which is so silly. But I do think we overcomplicate things, and we start thinking of, okay, well, these are all these key principles that everyone talks about. I need to put a shoebox. I need to shoebox the deer I'm after into all these different key principles.
mhm,
And I think that we overthink things, and when you start doing that, it's not good because then you start second guessing yourself. Do those things really matter? What's really that important? But I really feel like a guy like yourself or anyone that listens to a bunch of podcasts, they know a lot more than what they really realize. They just have to apply it and trust themselves. Like,
yeah.
just trust your gut instinct and don't overthink it. And I mean, I've been victim of that many, many, many times, and still am.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and just for an example, I follow a lot of people, but with the mapping software, I pinpointed a spot. It was on a new lease I was on this year. Of course, in the mountains, a lot of steep ridges and things like this. But it was almost a hub. If you looked on the mapping system on Spartan Forge, there was 5 ridges that kind of flowed into one point, and it was almost like a little depression, like a bowl, where these 5 ridges would come together on top of a mountain, and then almost like a sinkhole right there. And I
Mhm.
kept looking at it on the map, and there was no way to get to it really easy. It was going to be a hike. It was way on top of a mountain, but I kept telling myself, I've got to get there. I got to get there. November 1st, I said, you know what? I'm going to do this thing. I got to the woods about 3:30. I knew it was going to be about hour and a half hike up that mountain. I went ahead and knocked it out. Of course, I was sweating. I was hot, trying to take my time and stay cool as I could. But got up there, got my wind right, got to where my wind was blowing over into a hollow, a ridge, and I was right on the edge of that. And I kid you not, 30 minutes, first time ever going to this spot, 30 minutes in there, this buck right here, this big 7-pointer walks right
Yeah.
under my stand. And I'm just like, I was like, just the way that terrain laid out up there, November 1st, all those ridges, they got a funnel. It's almost like that funnel
Mhm.
situation. They got a funnel through here to go from this ridge system to that ridge system. And I was so happy with myself. I was like, man, this really worked.
Yeah.
But it was just, applying all those things that we learn and through experience, I was like, this is going to work out. And I was so happy to really make that effective. And it was worth the journey too. Now getting that buck off the mountain was a different story all by myself, but
A
it
big
just,
s You can't beat a big 7 point either, too. That thing looks heavy behind
oh
you. It
yeah.
looks
I
like a
mean,
hell of a 7 point.
well, this is a an 11 pointer right here behind me with a kicker,
Mhm.
and this guy's just as big as he is. See what I'm saying? I mean, frame wise,
Yeah.
he's a
He is
stud.
right. Yeah.
He's a stud. So I was super tickled with that deer and putting that work in to get up on top of that mountain and get that deer. And it just goes to show you, if you apply the things that you learn and really try to take in the information, sometimes it will work out for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was super
Do
cool.
you Are you a shoulder mount guy or a Euro mount guy?
I haven't done a shoulder mount in probably 20 years. I've got to like these Euros because they help the pocketbook out a lot.
Yep.
Golly, taxidermy anymore. And don't get me wrong, it's really great, but I hate paying that much for it.
Yeah,
And I think these Euro mounts look really good. I mean, I take
they
this
do.
old barn lumber and kind of just put it on my walls and mount the Euros to this old barn lumber, and I kind of like them. But if I can ever hit that threshold of like a 160 plus, I'm going to shoulder mount him for sure. This deer behind me is like 148, and then
Mhm.
the 7 pointer, he's got that frame, but he probably doesn't score that much. But if I told myself if I ever get 160 plus on a deer, I'm definitely going to go with another shoulder mount. So,
Yeah. Yes, I like it. They
yeah,
are sharp. That's the muzzleloader buck I shot this year. I wanted to Euro him, and I walked up to him, and he plopped off one antler already when he crashed. And then my buddy helped me pull it up in the truck, and the other one popped off. I was like, "Well, I'm definitely not Euro this deer now, so I
but I think
got to go the shoulder mount."
the whitetail illusion guys have came out with some type of where you can like take sheds and mount them or something like that.
I thought of that, but I was like, I don't know if it looks natural enough, and I was like, I'll shoulder mount next time. Next time I'll do
Yeah.
the Euro here. So
Wow.
yeah,
So pre-podcast, you and I were talking. You got to actually get in a saddle some this past year. Tell me about a little bit how you liked being in a saddle.
yeah. So I had a tethered Phantom, and I tried that, and like I'm the probably one of the least gear guys out there. I typically honestly say, Cameron, what do I need to get? And he just tells me because he's more in tune to what it is. And so I ended up the 2 years ago I got a Latitude, the 2 panel one.
Hmm.
Absolutely, really liked that one a lot more. It was a lot more comfortable, and I use the Latitude sticks, which I really really like. And honestly, it's been a little bit of adjustments, but I absolutely really enjoy it because I was just like everyone else was like saddle hunting. That seems kind of weird. It seems kind of funny. Like those saddle guys are a little different. I was
Yeah.
kidding, but there's a perception to it. Like you tell someone you hunt out of a saddle and they look at you like you're a little funny
Hmm.
because. Well, looking at it, you're like, okay, you have ropes that are holding you up there. It's people don't think it's safe. People don't think it's comfortable, which I was in that category too until I figured out my setup. But with that setup, it is, and I used to do a lot of hanging hunts. I wouldn't say I did a ton, but I would probably do 15 to 20 saddle or hanging hunts with usually like a lone wolf portable tree stand, lone wolf portable sticks. It was loud, it was noisy, it took a long time.
Hmm.
Now that a couple hunts into the year, I mean, I can get up a tree pretty darn quick with all in one system. Have the two sticks hanging in my saddle belt, and I have my
Yeah.
first two up there, and then I have. I mean, it's actually pretty darn I like it a lot, actually. It's actually grown on me a bunch, the last 2 years.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, and I have this conversation with a lot of my guests too. Is there's so many advantages to it. I think it really is probably one of the most safest ways to ascend and descend a tree. Unless you do
Yep.
something really, really goofy, it's almost impossible to really fall out of a saddle. Um,
Mhm.
so the safety and security there is so awesome to me. I was always the type of guy, hunting out of climbers or hang-ons or ladder stands. I never felt comfortable to stand up and shoot. I almost felt like I was wavy, like I just wasn't balanced when I stood up in those stands. So, it kind of limited me from the sitting perspective was I was limited to about my 1 or 2 o'clock, to like my 6 or 7 this way. The thing that I really enjoyed about the saddle was that coverage around a tree, the safety, security, the comfort. I was shocked about how comfortable they are. Yeah, I mean, there's just and the mobility of it. I mean, we can go on and just check those boxes all night, but yeah, man, I'm so glad you found it. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I can't promote saddle hunting enough to anybody that I talk to that's never really experienced it. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm too big, whether it's their body type or I'm too old. I don't think that's the case for many people. I mean, unless you really have a physical disability, I think anybody can really do it. It's not that complicated. It's just about putting the time into it and practicing and learning the setup. And then once you're comfortable with it, man, it's like, golly, why haven't I been doing this for so many years? But with
Mhm.
you being a guy that's been around the industry for quite some time, it really got popular. Let's say 2020 saddle hunting did.
Yeah.
Did you think it was going to stick then? Did you think it
I
would be a
didn't
fad?
I don't know if I thought it was a fad, but I would not anticipate the amount of adoption that
Hmm.
it has seen. I mean, I would have said I would not be a saddle hunter in 2020.
Yeah.
I just would. I had very little interest or natural curiosity regarding it. Obviously, John Eberhart pioneered saddle hunting as far as I'm concerned. And we had spent time with John, and he speaks with such conviction in everything. I was like, there's got to be something to it, but you try it, and maybe not, not do the due diligence, not do the practice, not really have the exact setup that is comfortable for me at that time. And then once I kind of got a system in place, it was really good. And what I also like about saddle hunting a lot is in the past I would do the traditional hang presets in the summer, have a I have a lot of tree stands, have a bunch of stands in my garage that I'll just, like I'm gonna go hunt there, I'm gonna do a hanging hunt.
Yeah.
But I feel that with a saddle, number 1, it's easy to get into a tree.
Hmm.
Number 2, when you go there, you're going with a purpose. You're going there with a plan. When you already have a bunch of pre-stands, you just fall into the same rut of every other season, and you're probably gonna have a very similar result to where when you're using your brain, you're thinking, not overthinking, but you're thinking of where you need to go and how to get there, and you just go through a hunt at it. And if it's good, then you already have the tree pre-trimmed and you can do it again. So I mean, I think the biggest thing is the flexibility and how many different trees you can get into. And that's it's just, man, it's you because I talk about how much I like it to other people, and now I see the face that I used to give people when they talked about it. But man, I really enjoy it. I
Yeah.
think it's
That's
a great tool.
It is, and we want folks to know that it is a tool. We're not discounting stands, lock-ons, ladders, climbers. Those have a place in the deer hunting world. Ground blinds, same way.
Hmm.
It's a tool. I think it's a very effective tool, and for anybody that's going to watch this in the future or watching now that really doesn't know anything about it, please, get a hold of me, get a hold of any of the team on the Saddle Cartel. We love to educate people about everything that we've learned when it comes to saddle hunting. Um, we just can't speak on it enough and how effective it can be as a tool. But again, if you're not a saddle hunter, you're a stand hunter, a blind hunter, as long as you're in the woods, I feel like we're all stewards of this great blessing we have in this country to freely go out and hunt these animals, legally, obviously. It's up to us to promote the hunting industry and promote it in a good light where, people can actually appreciate what we're doing and see the joy and the passion that we get out of it and not make it just about killing an animal. It's about the experience and the journey and the
Hmm.
adventure. So, yeah, I think, it's beholden on us to put that good message out there.
Hmm. I think the other thing too with saddle hunting in particular of the pre-hank sets, and I'm sure it's the same thing in West Virginia, but here in Illinois, there's different it's there's different parts of the season where different forms of habitat gets used heavily.
Hmm.
And if you hang 4 presets, and those are my 4 stands, for example, maybe only one of them is actually in the right spot for whatever particular time of year. But with the saddle, you can I feel like you're able to be way more reactive and effective than hanging hunts are cumbersome. I mean, I know they make really small tree stands now, but you
Hmm.
still got to haul the thing up, and it's going to clink cling, and then you got to hang it, and then usually the platforms are absolutely tiny. They're really not all that comfortable. We were talking before; it feels like you're just sitting in a waiting room for your
Yeah.
number to get called. And we're
Mhm.
saddle hunting. When you're in a saddle, you really feel like you're much more active. I feel like I know I move more, which is a downside. That's something I got to work on, but I do feel like I pay more attention to. Um, and the other thing too that I really like is if there's an area where there's a handful of trees. Let's say when you're hanging a tree stand, there's 3 stands, right? Like, or 3 trees. Like it could be that one, that one, that one, and you end up picking whatever tree you think is the best for whatever future wind that might be. With a When you go in the morning and either 3 miles per hour or 12 miles per hour wind, it may I may pick a different tree if it's a dead north, slight northwest, a true northwest, a west, and to just be able to really be refined to your point of the wind of being very important.
Mhm.
You might want to be 10 yards back or and so having that flexibility to me is something I did not really respect truthfully in the past, but something I pay a bunch of attention to because I'm sure you've been there before. Which tree do I hang my stand in? And you sit there
Oh,
and
yeah.
look at all the three of them for a while. And if it's like, well, if it's this wind, I should be in that one. If it's that one, I should be in that one.
Yep.
And with a saddle, you just climb whatever one's the best one for the day, and that's the end.
I know, and that's just another key component to it is just having that option. I've hunted trees as big around as say 8 inches, and I'm a big fella. I'm 6'3", 6'4", like 250. But I can actually effectively get in those trees. Now I don't hide very well in them, but I can be in them at some
Yeah.
height, and then of course I can be in a very large tree. So I'm not, that was one of the big key things for me too, picking up on this, the saddle game was just the access to the trees because there's going to be a lot of areas that you really want to hunt and you can't get a stand in those. So that's just another.
Yeah. And it's so much faster too, because if you're in a gnarly tree trying to do a hanging hunt with a tree stand, I mean, there's been times where I know it's taken me 35, 40 minutes to get set up. That does not happen hardly ever with the saddle because
Yep.
it's like, yeah, I'm just picturing a multi-branch tree where you end up having to make 3 trips up and down the tree to get your tree stand. I mean, maybe it's just me, but like your platform or your tree stand platform gets caught up and you got to climb down, unhook it, and get it through this crazy multi-trunk tree. With the saddle, you just everything is on you, and you just
Yep.
whoop, right up it. And
Yep.
I use the a bow sling. I have my bow on my back,
Hmm.
and I'm just straight up in a tree in 10 to 12 minutes,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's a lot of times paying attention and trying to be quiet too. But I cannot do that hang and hunt with the tree stand and sticks. I can't. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I can't either. But I have noticed that a lot of people are going to that hybrid system where they're still utilizing something like a lone wolf point 0.5 or 0.75 with a saddle. And I can see that, especially in the rut, when a dark to dark hunt, you have that flexibility to turn around and sit down just to take some pressure off your feet if your feet's
Mhm.
bugging you or whatever. And we talked about that too. Is just um, sometimes the foot pressure in a saddle can get uncomfortable. But there's ways to eliminate that too. And anybody watching, I plan to have a guest on very soon. And we're going to kind of dive deep into the foot pressure and maybe some boots that we can look at to kind of help alleviate the foot pain when it comes to saddle hunting. But I know for me, when I first got into it, I was still hunting in a pair of muck boots. And
Oh
just,
gosh.
I
Yep.
mean, they're really flexible. And I was like, man, my feet are smoked. And this is just terrible. And of course, trying to educate myself, picking the brain of some other people that have been doing it longer than I have. They was like, you need a good stiff sole pair of boots. And I purchased some. I was like, oh man, this makes such a world of difference. Just having these good stiff sole boots in comparison to like the muck boots. I'm like, yeah, muck boots are done. They're leaving. I'm done with those things. So,
What's the most overlooked saddle hunting accessory? And maybe like meaning is it knee pads? Is it I mean, what's something that you think a lot of guys don't utilize that they should consider?
they should consider, man, everybody has their own niche. It's going to be preference, really. The one thing that I can't do without, for me, is I'm a one sticker.
Oh,
I
you're
just,
crazy.
I just, I love the ability to have one stick, and it's just so fun to come down that tree. Drop that rappel rope, zip down like Batman. But again, that's a niche. As long as everybody's being safe, getting up and down the tree safely. But I don't know if there's that one thing that you just can't do without. Um, Obviously, you want to have good ropes and find the right saddle that fits you. And there's a lot of great companies out there that produce really, really high end equipment. And, you know, saddle hunting is not the cheapest thing to get into, but the good thing about it is once you've kind of bit that bullet and made those purchases, that stuff doesn't really have to be replaced. So,
Mhm.
somebody like you has got 20 tree stands, like you talked about, that's a recurring cost.
Yeah.
But these saddles, I mean, I think it would take many, many, many seasons to wear a saddle out. Now, you may have to replace the bridges, and like your tether ropes and lineman ropes from time to time, depending on how much wear and tear you're putting on those. But otherwise, I think it would really be hard to wear a saddle out because the stitching on a lot of these are so well made, using really high end industry type machines to manufacture these things. I think if a person invests in good equipment to begin with, their experience when it comes to saddle hunting is going to be so much more beneficial. I have seen that people that don't take the time or spend the money to invest in the better equipment have a bad experience, and it's because the equipment is kind of less than par. And so I think the one thing you can't do without is just comfort. I think comfort will be key. Um, and there's single panels, there's double panels. There's a lot of great companies that make the back band. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the back band. That thing can take so much pressure off your lower back, and it almost gives you that recliner type feel utilizing back band. There's a lot of just tips and tricks to come when it comes to saddle hunting that you know you can't be in the mindset that you have to be completely static and you can't change anything. These things are super adjustable. Your tether height's adjustable. There's so many things you can tweak to experience a better comfort. So yeah, I don't think there's that one thing that you can't do without. Now, there's a lot of things you have to have, like a good gear hanger in my mind,
Mhm.
goes a long way. Trying to screw in hooks and stuff in a tree, you're making noise, you're moving. Those gear straps, man, they go up super quick. Hang your stuff on them.
Which one do you run?
I run the
That's what I
tethered
have
gear
too.
strap. Yeah, the his strap. And you talked about knee pads. I don't use knee pads, but the way I set my gear strap up, that tail end of that his strap, there's a lot dangling there. So I take a back. I always have like a little hoodie bunched up in the bottom of my backpack. I hang my backpack off that tail end of that his strap. So when I want to press into the tree with my knees, I just put the backpack, swing it over between me and the tree, let that sweatshirt kind of be like the cushioning, and
Mhm.
it serves a great purpose for a knee pad. But some guys like the knee pad. There's a company out there, Legend Saddle Gear. He's come out with a great knee pad to go around a tree, and yeah, a lot of good companies putting out good stuff, especially for the knees. Whether it's knee pads or just those static, the pads that actually go around the tree and clip on.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's
One
just
thing that really Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No.
One thing that really helped me, I have a good friend, he's a lineman by trade, so
Mhm.
he's had climbed poles in the past, and he came out, and I was like, "Okay, tell me everything that I'm doing wrong." And so I feel like that was a big part of like, "No, you need to do that." Like just walking through that process, he saddle hunted a bunch too, so that he kind of understood that. And I feel like that was a big part of like, no, tweak that. And I don't even. This is how bad I am. I don't even know the different terms. Like, if it was a diagram of all the different saddle hunting names of like,
The
okay, I got to
lingo.
label the diagram. I would fail that test.
Yeah.
but, but he was able to like, okay, do this, do that. Okay, does that feel better? Does that feel worse? And that was when I got that set up. It made a world of a difference because before I was like, yeah, this isn't quite right. So I think anyone that's getting in knew it. And in the saddle hunting community seems to be very, very supportive.
Oh,
Where there's, it's, I think of, I've been a innocent bystander in this space for a long time. The mobile hunting tree stand community is some of the most rabid subsector of hunting that I really because they're all very similar products and they're
yeah.
usually aluminum cast or like whatever it is, but it's relentless. But I will say saddle hunting seems like, oh, what saddle do you use? And you say it, and it's like, oh, that's a good saddle. I run this one. Then that's the end of it. Versus like, what stand do you run? And then it's like, oh no, that's garbage. I really respect that about the saddle community. To tell you the truth.
Yeah. And something I found, trying to get into the media side, having a podcast and such. Almost everybody I've reached out to in the saddle industry are so receptive. Really good guys behind most of these companies, willing to talk, to share their knowledge, to come on and share their stories. it's not like you're. I don't. They don't feel untouchable. I mean, if they really feel accessible, and I've really appreciated a lot of the guys in the industry and just how accessible they are and so willing to talk and just help people out. And not just the industry leaders, the manufacturers, but the group itself. Here at the Saddle Cartel, we've got over 7,000 members on our Facebook page, and you know everybody is so helpful. If there's a question, man, it's like everybody wants to chime in and give their expert advice on it, and it's never bashing, it's never degrading, and I really appreciate just the cooperative nature of all these guys and girls that do this. And yeah, it's such a fun thing. We enjoy it, really do.
Do you think saddle hunting has seen its peak in popularity, or how close do you think it is?
I think it's growing. I think it's, even though we've really been peaking for 5 years, I think it's continuing on a gradual incline, because you just hear, for instance, one of the local pro shops here, that in my hometown, the guys that run that, they called me. They was at a kind of, it wasn't the ATA, but something similar, where retailers go and meet manufacturers and put their big orders in for the year. And
Yep.
they're calling me, just getting all this advice, because they don't really know much about saddle hunting. But I'm good friends with the guys that run the shop, and because they had bought a bunch of stuff for their shop last year and sold completely out of it. And
Wow.
it's like, yeah, man, it's like it just keeps gaining popularity. And folks like Levi Morgan, he's an avid saddle hunter, and he's, a lot of people follow him and want to kind of
Mhm.
mimic what he does. Guys like that promoting it, I can just see it continually. Just, it may not, I won't say that we're on a downhill peak, so to speak, but I can see a gradual incline. I mean, it seems to be gaining popularity more and more and more, and especially as people experience it. And the good thing is, especially with these mobile expos, people are actually coming to these things and getting to talk to the manufacturers and
And
try
try it
the thing,
on. I feel like that's
try
a
it
big
on.
part of it. Yeah.
That's
And
the,
ask the silly questions that I did have at one
yeah,
point. Um, and have someone like yourself be like, "No, you need to adjust your bridge, or you need to change," like, those little things that there's a bunch of different YouTube videos, but I just feel like, real-time interactive there is probably so effective for
is
potential purchasers, and also great for the manufacturers too. But, I mean,
absolutely,
that's a
absolutely.
good point.
Yeah, cool. Well, Jake, I've had you on here for nearly an hour. I want to thank you for everything you've done in the industry so far. All the great content you put out. Thank you, and Chad and Cameron, for all the hard work you guys put into Exodus. Again, so sorry about the way things had to end there, but so glad we at the Saddle Cartel have a chance to kind of help promote you and what you got
Yeah,
coming
thank
in
you.
the future. Please, 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 everybody, um, when Jake gets his new stuff going out, please give him a like and a follow there. Jake, tell us where everybody can find you and follow
Oh,
along with
jeez. Yeah, so, they could right now, they can subscribe to the YouTube Exodus, YouTube channel and the
you. Okay.
Exodus podcast. It's gonna have a new face here very soon, and, admittedly, I mean, we sold off the, Facebook page, the Instagram page, the TikTok, because I didn't think we were gonna do this, and, so, like, some of those platforms will be started from scratch. But I mean, I'm easy to get a hold of. My Instagram is Jake Hofer, and I want to thank you for the support of Exodus, for everything over the years, and being a part of the program. I really respect what you're doing here. And next time I have a saddle question, I'm going to text you and ask you a
Absolutely.
question that may seem silly, but I'm coming to you as the expert. So thanks for having me on, and really appreciate you and what you're doing here.
Oh man, we have a blast doing this. Like I told you on the phone when we first started talking, at the Saddle Cartel, we want to be a safe landing zone for everybody. Whether you're a new saddle hunter, you're a manufacturer trying to promote a new product, we want to be that buffer, that conduit that gets the information out. It comes in and it goes out in a good, healthy manner. Something we don't put up with is, you've seen a lot of groups, just people bashing or downgrading. We want to promote everybody, whether you're killing those spikes, 4 pointers, or 180s. We want to celebrate that stuff, and just create just a good atmosphere for everybody and all the hunters out there, no matter what style of hunting you choose, what weapon you choose. We just want to be that good, safe place for everybody. So we enjoy doing this, and we appreciate guys like you who have a foothold in the industry, giving us a chance to kind of just highlight you and pick your brain a little bit. So
Well, I appreciate it. I'm gonna listen to the boot episode too and
yeah,
see what insults I need to get. So like I said, I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you inviting me on here, and
absolutely, man.
I'm itching to tweak my setup here and get a little bit more comfortable. I'm looking forward to that.
That's all it takes is just practice and time. And what I tell pressure is like, how to tell people, how a diamond is formed, right?
Pressure,
Time and
baby.
time and pressure, time and
That's right.
pressure. That's all it
Yep.
takes, man. And you'll
Yep.
get that diamond. So, all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more good episodes. Jake was talking about Cameron, getting him on soon. Cameron's also going to come on and have a guest spot with me,
Awesome.
talking about Hawk optics and what Hawk will offer us on the bow hunting side of things. Anyway, don't forget we got our March Madness tournament going on this month in the Saddle Cartel. June coming up, we got Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. We'll be doing a fundraiser there again. So, again, thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the guys that will watch this or girls that will watch this in the future. And Jake, continue to do great things, man. I can't wait to see what you got coming down the pipe. And I'll say
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Take care.
See ya.